Very good morning, everyone who's here live on this Zoom, and welcome to this 14th session on the Mahamudra prayer. As always, we start with our good motivation, this very, very essential, very precious, not just something we need to do, something we should love to do, to settle into a frame of mind of total love for all beings, however much we can do it, unconditional, great, loving care for all the beings, the good, the bad, the ugly, and in particular, those with whom we have a karmic connection in this life, and those who manifest in this life. So let's do our prayers, and in particular, joyfully. Sometimes life can be quite challenging, depressing, what goes on in the world. But if we are truly Buddhist, we know this life is one among many. And although we do what we can, and we should do everything we can for this world, it's not everything. We will have other lives, future lives, in many, many different worlds. And that's something to be very, very, very joyful about. They say in Kalachakra Tantra and other places, in general, the time of Shakyamuni Buddha, among the 1,002 Buddhas who come to this group of beings, which is our Dharma community, so many billions, trillions of beings in one family amongst infinite beings. So we have 1,002 Buddhas who come, and Buddha Shakyamuni comes at a worse time than any of them. We can't quite say that just now is as bad as it gets. It will get worse. But in our future lives, as we head towards Buddha Maitreya and then all the other Buddhas, it's going to be wonderful. Wonderful. So we should have a joy of Dharma as we study the teachings. Sonje chodon soji chonam la janchu padu dani chapsanche. Dagi jinso jipe sonam ji drola penchera sonje drop parasho. Sem chen tamche dewa dang dewe jodang den parajuche. Dungal dang dungal ji jodang tral parajuche. Dungal mepe dewa tampa dang men tral parajuche. Mirin chadan netam tralwe. Kanyom Chempola ne parajuche. Doje chonjen talo narodang mapa mela choje kampopa. Dosum sheja kunchen kamapa cheshi chonje jupa senamdang. Drita sausum paden drupa so zablam choja chela nyanipe. Yame droganda po kajula so wandap so kajula manam jupa zeno nam tarajinjelo. Shenlo gomchi kampara sumpa shin zeno kuna choshen me padam. Sede data chope gomchen la nyeko shenpa me parajinji lo. Mogu gomchi gore sumpa shin mga tego jepe lama la. Jundu soan depe gomchen la. Chame mogu jewara jinji lo. Yengme gomchi mashil sumpa shin. Kansha tope ngo sumade, macho de karachope gomchen la gomcha lodan tralware jinji lo. Nanto ngo chukra sumpa shin chiang mayen chiang chawana. Manga ropa chawe gomchen la kode yerme topare jinji lo. Deya ta shame shamawati shameta shatru kuri marajite karota ke ore tejovati oloyane beshuta nimale malapanaye kukure kaka grase grasana Omukhi paramukhi amukhi shamme tawane sawa graha dandanane negri hittava sawa bhava pravadina vimukta marabhasha savitva buddhamudra annukatita sava mare putsarita pare shuddhe bega shantu sava marakama. Pulen sawe lama rinpoche, dagye chiwara pende tenshula. Kadrin chempo gone jizonte, kuson tuje mudrup sahado sura. So also a very warm welcome to those of you joining us on YouTube. Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. And I hope you enjoy this teaching. So we had just a fortnight ago, we had the last talk, and we started looking at shamatha. In general, in the verses about practice, we saw how we must get the view correct. And then once we have the view as correct as it can be, that's another story, because there's the view which is conceptual understanding. We just know where we're going. We have an idea, is the word. We have an idea of what it's about, where we're going, what Mahamudra is, how it's different from the others, how it's about everything mind. Mind is no mind, and so on. We looked at that. But the real view has nothing to do with words and ideas. The real view is the way Buddha mind knows everything. So we're not there yet, but that will be the real view from which the words which describe that come as the conceptual view. So we need to get the view straight, then we need to practice. How we need to practice is covered in 5 verses or more. We have an overview, and then last time we started looking at we need shamatha as a basis for our Mahamudra practice. We saw that shamatha is shine in Tibetan, and that she and the ne, she means peace, and the ne means to abide or to be stable, and that we need to find peace, and that peace, serenity, stillness, whatever we define as peace, needs to be the second thing, needs to abide in what is good. In Mahamudra, then we have the peace that is proper to Mahamudra. It's not a state of peace, it's to be at peace with ourselves and everything, because our mind is awakened. It's a definition of peace, which, like so many things in Dharma, is a definition due to what it's not. It's like the word nirvana. Nirvana is not a state. There's no such thing as nirvana. No? Nirvana is a negative term. It means no more suffering. Suffering finished. Suffering less would be good in English. One word, suffering less. Yeah, make that. It's not nirvana is this, it's bliss, it's so-and-so, it's so-and-so. That's nirvana. The word nirvana means suffering's finished forever. It's defined by what it's not. So peace, in the way we're handling it, is defined by what it's not. What is not is trouble. No trouble. So then how do we define trouble? Then we define it in the view. So we're not going to go back there. But the trouble is the trouble of the kleshas, the mind poisons, and in general thought. But then it's also the trouble of ignorance, the trouble that's caused by not knowing what we need to know. When you don't know enough, you get into trouble. Let's put it that way. And until you've got the bodhisattva's clarity of mind and the Buddha's clarity of mind, knowing, then there can be what is defined, what is talked about as subtle trouble. Subtle trouble, meditators' trouble, where you get stuck in experience, or you get stuck in absorption. So we're looking at that. We started it last time. And let me remind you of the verse. Rough or smooth, the waves of thought come to rest of their own accord. Without agitation, the river of mind settles naturally, free from the polluting silt of drowsiness and torpor. May the ocean of shamatha remain unwavering and stable, is our last line prayer. So rough or smooth, remember last time I told you, but maybe let's revisit it. It says the waves of thought. Now the word that's translated there as thought for convenience in Tibetan is tokpa. Tokpa is difficult. To a Western ear, tokpa sounds like tokpa, doesn't it? But tokpa is not the same as tokpa. And you can't hear the difference. And if you learn Tibetan, it will take you a while to hear the difference. But tokpa, which means thought, which is translated as thought, doesn't just mean thought as like words in the head. It's mental activity, or busy mind being busy, mind being active, mental activity. So the waves of thought, rough or smooth, gross or subtle, we could have translated it. Gross is when our mind is active and engaged with its object. We are busy, tasting, eating, cold potatoes and mayonnaise, whatever. So you are, when the mind is engaged or looking, like at a movie, or listening to music, when it's totally in there, or when it's clunking away thinking about something, churning over ideas, that's the gross waves. The subtle waves can be two things. It can be, once you're a meditator, at one and the same time that you are engaged visually, orally, whatever way it is, or in thoughts, you've got a more subtle level of yourself, your awareness, which is telling the story of what's going on. And that can get very, very, very subtle. You have ideas about what's happening. You have an interpretation, whether you put words on that interpretation or not. Let me give you an example, without words. Someone who doesn't like you, maybe somebody who looks down their nose at you. Okay. There's a room, wherever it is, Samiling, where quite a few people, and you come in the door and they look at you, and the look in their eyes shows you that in less than a second, their story of you has been flagged up. But they don't even need to say, Ken, just it's in their eyes. They've got you boxed. That box is their reference point. They've got references for everything. We have references for everything. Otherwise, we feel uncomfortable. What's that? We have references. And whether we actually put words like, that troublemaker Ken, or that on it or not, doesn't matter. It's a background level of interpretation that can get very subtle. Like, imagine even you are sitting in a very, very smooth meditation. Got no clunky thoughts, and you're with the object of your meditation. You feel very still. But there's something subtle in the background that knows you're very still, and your mind is undistracted, and so on, because it's that same background awareness that analyzes, however subtly, that when you lose the concentration is going to eventually pull you back to your object. So this can be very subtle. So what the Karmapa is talking about here, the waves of mental activity are the gross ones, but then also the subtle background knowledge of the gross. Or if there's no gross at all there, and we are in quite good meditation practice, then it is this at first unperceived or imperceptible inner subtle analysis and dialogue. So this is one of my party tricks. Okay, in Abhidharma, when we're looking at this, then we look at 9 levels of topa, mental activity. Gross, middling, subtle, middling, middling, subtle, middling, gross, subtle, middling, subtle, and subtle. The subtle, to give you an idea, is what we're dealing with up in the 8th, 9th, 10th bodhisattva levels, almost Buddha. This very, very subtle background, pigeonholing, analysis can be so fine that while you're in the gross level, you don't even know it's there. And even when you're in the middling level, you don't know it's there. Step by step is why we have the bodhisattva levels. It's only when you're so awakened and clear and at the same time stable and quiet that this subtle inner story is revealed. When you thought it was all sorted and all quiet. It is like quiet. You know that they tried to make the quietest place in the world, I think in New York, university experiment. And one of, who was it? Cage or Kale, I forget, the composer was invited there to experience total quiet. But as he sat there, he realized that a human being will never experience total quiet because his body noises became loud as anything. His heartbeat, the fluids going around his body. He realized that while you're human, you can never experience total quiet. At first, it was deadly quiet when he went in there. So much soundproofing that it's like being in a place of stillness you've never met before. But then so most people can't take it for more than 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So anyway, it's a very good example. You think it's quiet, or with our eyes, we think it's dark, but then after 5-10 minutes, your eyes get used to the dark and you start to see things. So anyway, subtle John Cage. Oh, thank you. The point is, just to explain this first, the rough or smooth waves of mental activity. Now, what I explained last time is what our Tibetan teachers explained to us about dhyana, the mind's absorption. And very briefly last time I went through the 4 dhyanas, the first dhyana, second dhyana, third dhyana, fourth dhyana, the 4 formless meditations, and then the special aspect of the 4th dhyana, which is very relevant to nirvana, total freedom. It's strange. It's one of these things we were talking before the session started about the Karmapa looking into Buddhist history. Somebody's going to look into this one day. But in all of our meditation texts, when we study shamatha, we study it through these 9 stages of meditation, 4 dhyanas, 4 formless meditations, special aspect of the 4th dhyana. But we don't practice them. We always study it through those. Where do they practice those? In the Theravada school. There they go through them, they cultivate them very well. So the story we learn about the 9 stages of shamatha meditation is the classical story of your mind disappearing from samsara and putting a stop to samsara, so achieving freedom from samsara and becoming an arhat in the way they do it these days in the Theravada path, in the way the Shakyamuni Buddha did it over, wait for it, 3 cosmic eons. It can be a rather long journey. 3 cosmic eons is rather long. But it's a beautiful journey because you have all the time in the world to go very thoroughly from step to step and step to step through the 9 stages of meditation and all the stages of the Bodhisattva path. So for whatever reason, in our Kagyu text, Nimapa text, any Tibetan text, when they talk about shamatha, it's presented in this classical way that's common to all the Buddhist schools. But we do not spend lots of time practicing those dhyanas, and especially we don't spend lots of time in the absorption in each of them. What we do need to understand first and foremost is how it works. How it works. So our mind is busy. Our mind hops and skips and jumps. And of course, the movie industry has realized this. So if you watch TV, telefilms, soaps and things like this, which I don't have TV, but I've seen them in passing, then you only keep your camera in one position, for 4 seconds, 5 seconds, then it's a different take, different action, because they know the interest span of the viewer needs to be stimulated all the time. Change image, change view. Of course, back in the, whenever it was, 50s, 60s, when we have these Italian filmmakers like Fellini and Pasolini, sometimes you'd have a film where the camera's in one place the whole time. Complete opposite. So modern filmmakers have understood how the human mind works. It likes to jump about, it changes topic. And of course, once we start to meditate and see our mind, and especially once we try and anchor the mind to one place, we realize what a monkey it is. It doesn't like it. It wants to run off here, run off there. I think last time I said, like a little puppy dog, where we're teaching it to sit. It doesn't want to. It wants to run away, wants to run and play. So our mind that we bring to meditation, that we bring to Mahamudra, is a busy mind out of control. The degree of lack of control varies from person to person, and we don't let it do extremes if we can. But once we meditate and we try and keep our mind in one place, we see how out of control it is. Despite our best efforts, it goes here, it goes there, it thinks of that, it becomes aware of this, it toys with this idea, it remembers that. And we have to haul it back to what we're looking at. So this is the process of shamatha. The uncontrolled, habitual mind is what causes us to make karma. Some of the karma is good, some of the karma is harmful. That mixture of good and bad with its results we call samsara. The way out of samsara is to take away its cause, which is this uncontrolled and sometimes harmful mind. Habit. So if we can keep stopping the mind from going into the habit by holding it in one place, a good place, or at least not a harmful place, then the habit is not being fed. Habits that aren't fed become weaker. It's a process of attrition, of atrophy, whereby the only way we have to combat our habits is to make a new habit, and it's the habit of meditation. Fortunately, we don't need as much of the new habit as all the thousands of lifetimes of the old habit. We can break a long habit in less time than it's lasted. If you've smoked for 30 years, it doesn't mean it will take you 30 years to give it up. So the whole point is to have an anchor, and the anchor itself, as I said last time, is not important. Different anchors have different benefits, but the whole point is you're telling the mind, no, be here. So in our definition we had last time of shamatha, we had beautiful, meaningful definition to hold or to maintain the mind, which is what we're working with, where you want it, one-pointedly, in virtue, in what is good. And so even if it's something neutral, like shamatha with a stone or a candle flame, because we start with the prayers of intention and we finish with the prayers of dedication, even though in itself, if you do it well, nothing's happening. Because of the driving intention and the diligent effort you put into the practice and the dedication at the end, looking at a stone or a candle flame becomes virtue. So to maintain the mind where we want it, now we are taking control. Not in a strange control freak way, but this mind which took us to places we didn't want to go, where we are the puppet and the habits of the strings. Now we are taking hold of the strings and we're turning the puppet into a bodhisattva and a liberated being. But anyway, to get back to the point I was making earlier, all the teachings we have about the Dhyanas and come from the general Buddhist school, let's say, which these days is embodied in Theravada. The point is to all this disempowering our habits of mind is called non-distraction in Buddhist language, non-distraction. So there's a how can you say, when were we to practice the Dhyanas? Let's look at these Dhyanas very briefly today, because we need to move on, and we did some last time. But in the first one, as we're training, God, it's so hard to describe this without going into the details. Where do we study it? Where will you find the details you can't find today? We study it in karma teachings, not in the meditation chapters usually, in the teachings on karma. When we study karma, we have virtuous karma, non-virtuous karma. So I think you all know those. And then we have a third area of karma, which is called the karma of immobility. Of course, the word karma means action or deeds. So we are looking at what we are doing. Are you doing harm? Are you bringing benefit to others? The word karma means deeds. So when we sit and meditate, we're not doing. And a lot of meditation, deeper meditation, is learning how not to be active. So it's called the karma of immobility. And it's all about meditation. And in there, we discover these dhyanas and the logic of it, which is the point. So when we train, and then each one has a training phase where we have to learn how to do it. That's number one. And then there is an obstacle removing phase where through the training, we take away the obstacles to absorption. Then there's the actual absorption, we call samadhi or absorption. And then there's a fourth stage, which is once the samadhi is very mastered and you can go into it so naturally and quickly, it becomes a tool. Then there is the post-samadhi in the sense of how that samadhi can be used to take you forward to the next step. So we need to train, overcome the obstacles, actually develop long-lasting, clear absorption, and then the fourth stage. So when we train in the first samadhi, we have to learn how to focus and keep bringing our mind back. We use tools like concept, even speaking, saying the name of, like if it's a candle flame, 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 to keep our mind focused. We have concept one way or another. We have analysis. And then there is what will come is physical well-being. You'll feel very, very smooth and blissful and harmonious through shamatha meditation. And then your mind will feel very happy. And that happiness, when people actually do a lot of shamatha, first dhyana, that happiness becomes bliss. When we read the Theravada texts of how that bliss is, I mean, you blissed out your brains, basically. You feel so gorgeously happy. As it feels like you're, almost like you've levitated, like you're flying. Mind so free and happy. So there are those four things in the first dhyana. And like I said, once you're used to the absorption, then you use that to move on to the next step, which is the second dhyana, where you realize this is wonderful. Physical well-being, mental well-being, feels so perfect, harmonious. But there is still a conceptual doing to keep your mind focused. And there is still a degree of analysis. And there's the knowledge at that point that if we can just have physical well-being, mental well-being, without the conceptual effort or the analytical effort, it will be better. So then the second absorption, once we've managed to do that, only has the physical well-being, the mental well-being. There's no more deliberate thinking, effort, and so on required. So then we spend time in the second absorption with its qualities. And then that leads us to how to use that to get to the next stage. And one realizes, and this may sound strange to a beginner, that the mental well-being, the mental bliss, is actually an obstacle to the mind getting rid of the more subtle obscurations. And that what we need is equanimity. It's your mind. It can't be in equanimity and blissful at the same time in shamatha. Let's not talk about elsewhere, but in shamatha. Equanimity is equanimity. Bliss is happy. Something's happy. There's a feeling of happiness. The mind is happy. It's not the same as the mind, which is totally peaceful. So the mental bliss has to go. So in the fourth dhyana, there is only the physical bliss. In the fourth dhyana, so in the third dhyana, the physical bliss is there. In the fourth dhyana, it has to go. And then in the fourth dhyana, once there is total equanimity and absorption, then there is a special aspect. Now, what's the special aspect? It's Dharma related. See, anyone can do shamatha. You don't need to be a Buddhist. You sit down, you focus. There's a logic to itself. The more you focus, the less your mind is distracted, deeper the absorption. And the absorption can become hours, days, weeks. Anyone can do it. And it's present in many systems of spirituality, or whatever we call it, all over the world. So when it's combined with Dharma and Dharma motivation, then there is a more subtle aspect of liberation from habit which occurs. So this is the special aspect of the fourth dhyana. From there, if we follow the logic, then the mind is totally absorbed in what? Well, whatever it's been focused on. And as we saw last time, I can't repeat everything, but in the last time we saw that through focusing a long time on something, actually you realize that it's not out there, it's inside you, it's your mind. And so we get absorbed, like if it's a candle flame, in the inner reproduction of the candle flame. Even if you shut your eyes, you can be equally absorbed, if that makes sense. So now, from these meditations using form, we have four more meditations which are formless. First one's limitless space. It kind of follows. What the hell is all this about? Okay, you've stopped your mind being distracted. You've gone beyond physical bliss, mental bliss, total equanimity. What is? I've been calling it mind, but now mind's super quiet. Super quiet, nothing happening, absorption. So it seems like limitless space, nothing but space, endless space. And so one becomes absorbed in endless space. No more object, no more focus, just the idea of endless space. You could get lost in there. It could go on for quite some time. And indeed, they find bodies of meditators, or they did in the past, who have been literally spaced out in limitless space. And of course, their bodies died in the end. But their mind's still in limitless space, so then what happens? The body dies, but the mind stays there and can stay there for endless ages because there's nothing to bring it back. But when that absorption, that samadhi, becomes mastered, it becomes the springboard for the next step, which is, what is limitless space? Is it really space, like space out there, cosmic space? Has somehow our mind become one with endless space? And then you discover, or they discover, but in the living reality, that no, it's not really limitless space. It's limitless consciousness. Serene equanimity of a consciousness that's limitless. Which serves as the springboard to number 3 of the Formless meditations, which is, sorry, I'm working from memory. Limitless space, limitless consciousness. Nothing at all, it's called. So now, with all this time in limitless consciousness, you realize that it's, what have you been absorbed in? The idea of limitless consciousness. The idea of limitless consciousness. And whatever you do with that, the next stage is to realize there's nothing at all. Now, this is not shunyata in the Mahayana Mahamudra sense, nothingness. No, nothing at all, shunyata. This is nothingness, nothing at all, or nothingness. So then there's absorption in nothingness. It's not, doesn't feel like you're in limitless space. It doesn't feel like you're in limitless consciousness. Now it feels like nothing, nothing, nowhere, nothing, anywhere to be found, gone in nothing. Which serves as the springboard to realize that, yes, although there's nothing, there's a subtle something that knows there's nothing. So the 4th of the limitless contemplations is called neither cognition nor absence of cognition. That's the 4th. Limitless space, limitless consciousness, nothing at all, neither cognition nor absence of cognition. So these are our 9 classic stages of shamatha. When somebody does train thoroughly in all of them, as in the Theravada tradition, then you need to get very skilled at it. And it's called turgal. Maybe you've come across this term in Nimapa terminology, skipping across, jumping across. It means you have to become really good. You can go into first dhyana. From there, you can jump to 3rd formless. From there, you can go into 4th dhyana. And from there, you can go into this. And so you need to be able to go into any of those absorptions like that, so that your mind becomes flexible. And through that, and then through blending insight into the special aspect of the 4th dhyana, then you end up arhat. And your mind is free from samsara forever. So this is what we study in the karma teachings on immobility karma. This is what's taught as the basic theory of where the mind's going when we do Mahamudra or Dzogchen. We use that template, but then because of our bodhisattva vow, we know that one of the obstacles to a Buddha's enlightenment is to spend time, to waste time in absorption, which is only for our own benefit. So we're very, very cautious of giving our mind and giving our time to absorption. And it's not easy because it's so nice. It's so nice. And compared with wretched samsara, it's so super nice. Your body is totally in harmony and in bliss, and your mind is just perfect, untroubled equanimity. It has a pull. You just want to go deeper and deeper. It's got a magnetism, it's got its own pull. So we are cautious of that. But we have to get rid of our own habits of samsara because they cause us pain, they cause others pain. And shamatha is the only way to do it. So we need to cultivate shamatha perfectly, but without the spending a lot of time being absorbed aspect. So now, the way we practice shamatha needs to be under the guidance of our guru. We're talking about Mahamudra. There is no Mahamudra without a guru, without a teacher, meditation teacher. The advice needs to be tailor-made for you. What I want to do now is to read you just a little bit, a few samples of advice. So this is not a teaching for you how to meditate on shamatha in Mahamudra. It's not. But I want to give you some free samples of the sort of advice that you might be getting so that you get the feel of it. So I'm going to read from the 9th Karmapa's text of Mahamudra Shamatha meditation, just some excerpts. That is why, without forcibly blocking the thought waves that emerge from your mind, you should allow the waves of thought, these waves of mental activity we've been looking at, to come naturally to a halt, for they will subside on their own. Then the flow of the river of mind, the universal ground consciousness, will also become stilled, and it will naturally come to rest. When concentrating on something large, hold the gaze and the essential points concerning the body properly. So as I said last time, implicit in this, not in the verse, is that we train in meditation posture. It's very important. And so he says, when concentrating on something large, hold the gaze and the essential points concerning the body. Hold them very properly. Focus your gaze and attention one-pointedly on whatever happens to be there right in front of you, a pillar of a temple, a wall, a mountain, and rest evenly without allowing your mind to wander at all to anything else. If you're concentrating on something small, hold your mind on a small piece of wood, 4 finger widths in length, or a small pebble. If you tighten your concentration on the focus too much, this will act as a catalyst that will provoke thoughts. Therefore, don't be tight. Let your mind settle into itself. Without thinking about any other object, rest on the focal support, undistracted, totally relaxed. Don't think about its color or whether it's thick or thin, long or short. Let your mind simply relax, undistracted, in its own place. Let your mind relax in its own place, but without severing the tether of mindfulness. Because the focal support is merely a cue or reminder to be undistracted, simply direct your gaze unwaveringly towards it and relax. It's merely a method for holding the mind still. You are not meditating on the support itself. When you've gotten fully into the session, If the focal support begins to vibrate or move, or you cannot see it, or your eyes become numb, stop completely. Don't look at the focal support. Instead, look up slightly into space at the level of your eyebrows and let your mind relax in its own state. And at this point, don't take any reference point for meditation, just remain undistracted. Rest still in vibrant, lucid awareness, unveiled by dullness or sluggishness. It's very important to do short sessions. Alternate between tightening your concentration and relaxing. Tightening means to concentrate intently on whatever the object is without allowing your mind to be distracted, even for an instant. Your mouth, eyes, and ears should be intensified in concentration, and even the limbs of your body should be held taut. Meditation with a proper amount of tension, this kind of tension, is analogous to trying to identify a thief in a marketplace or to count a number of horses from a big distance. You should tighten your concentration as if you were crossing a river on a bridge made of a single plank, or if you're carrying a pot full of melted butter. That's tension, tightening. Relaxing might seem to mean that all the efforts of meditation are to be cast away. But in fact, it's not a case of casting away anything. Just completely let go into the unfabricated state, the absence of a self, and for brief moments, simply be mindful without wandering. Lengthen your sessions a little and relax your body and mind from within. This can be illustrated by the following examples. The kind of mental ease you feel once your work has been completed, or the relief experience after an illness has cleared up, or a sheaf of hay when the string is cut, the binding string is cut, and the hay just falls apart, or the feeling of a small child with a full stomach, or the feeling of sun and moon free from clouds, or the feeling of a candle flame without wind. When looking at your own mind, do not regard resting peacefully, the emergence of blissful samadhi, do not regard that as an asset. And don't regard its absence as a problem. Just place your mind without distraction. When you are not distracted, thoughts won't arise. When thoughts do manifest, look at them. You will see in the beginning, they do not arise. In the middle, they do not abide. And in the end, they do not cease. They are free from the limitations of being things in their own right, being an entity. So that's just some quotes of real advice that a teacher will give. Now, they won't just give the words of advice and that counsel. They'll be, one way or another, sitting with you. And that when it comes to relaxation, and this wonderful example, big classical example of wheat, when you've got a sheaf and it's bound up with a string, if you cut the string, all the bits and pieces, they just fall naturally. So where our mind, whatever's happening, just is there in its own place. We're not trying to do anything with it. You'll be sitting with them and they will give you the feeling of that. And they'll answer your questions about it. All of those bits of advice are just to show that we are not following the Shravaka path of absorption into the various Dhyanas. We will get advice from our teacher about how shamata should be and should feel. Now, in our verse, it says, without agitation, the river of mind settles naturally. So the stream of consciousness or river of mind will settle. There'll be peacefulness and blissfulness and so on. Will settle naturally when there is no distraction. So if we take away the distraction by bringing our mind back to its focus, gradually, the whole of our mind settles. It is peaceful and is in a much better, more workable place. Then it says, free from the polluting silt of drowsiness and torpor. Now, we come into the next stage. So, okay, let's imagine we've been practicing for a couple of years now, shamatha, and with all the different advice from the teacher, at least 6 months or something. The next stage is remedying and learning how to deal with the remedying itself. We don't want to over-remedy. So we need a toolkit to deal with what are called obstacles to meditation. But then we don't need to be using our tools all the time, because your mind is never going to be peaceful and settle if this isn't quite right, and I've got to fix that. And it's like, I know some people with a meal, beautiful meals, they set a beautiful table, but like everything has to be right. I don't know if you've ever seen these banquets at Buckingham Palace, where the guy comes with a ruler and every piece of cutlery is in the right place and everything's right. Everything's served in a certain way. The cooking has to be a certain way. And if anything's not right, it's like this. So we don't want to become nervous wrecks through meditation. There are some things we need to be remedying, but we don't need to be thinking, am I agitated? Is my mind a bit busy? Oh, what's the remedy? Okay, I need to do this. And, am I getting dull? Too much remedy is no good. So we need to know the remedies. We need to learn to become skillful in applying them. But then the next step is to do more and more without the remedies by going deeper. This won't all make sense. I just need to tell you what's behind these verses. I need to sketch out a landscape. So then what are the obstacles? Usually they're described as two, very generally. Agitation, the mind's too busy, or dullness, where the mind is too sleepy, too thick. People say these days mind fog or whatever. So you're either too dull and unaware, or else you're too busy. So when these happen, we can't cultivate a peaceful basis state for our deeper work on mind that we'll be looking at in the next verses. We need, as I've said many times, shamatha, a peaceful state of mind, as our laboratory for discovering our mind and looking into the true nature of mind and finding Buddha nature. So we need shamatha. We need a degree of stability and peacefulness. So what gets in the way of that are those two main obstacles. Now, classically, we can unpack those two, busyness, agitation, and dullness, into 5. Nagarjuna tells us about 5, for instance. And so they are agitation, which is a mind too busy, thinking. Your body feels not settled, your mind is here and there. That's number 1. The second one is remorse, regret. When something weighs on our mind, you're thinking sometimes about what happened earlier in the day or in the week. We regret, We feel bad about things. And sometimes for good reason, in worldly terms, but we need to learn in a meditation session, which is the most beneficial thing for our heart and mind. We, at that time, don't let remorse in. Once you're up from your cushion, you're having a cup of tea, then you can regret what you said to the man next door or whatever. That's the time for that. But here we are mastering the mind. So remorse and regret are big issues for human beings. A third obstacle is sleepiness, lassitude. The fourth is desire. It says longing for the desirable, where our mind keeps drifting off thinking, if only, or imagining beautiful fantasies. I have a terrific experience of those. What I mean is decades and decades of wonderful imaginings of what might be. So I know that one very well. It's an obstacle to meditation, to the mind being calm and still, and getting into its, what we call its own place, its beautiful its own natural beauty. So longing for the desirable out there, in other people, in nature, in circumstances, and so on, is not what we're doing. We're finding the beauty of a mind that's settled in itself. And the fifth thing is doubt. When we study doubt in Abhidharma, we see there are two sides of doubt: useful doubt, harmful doubt. Useful doubt is when we study, and we need to really clear up any confusions and doubts and mistrust we've got of Dharma teachings when we're studying. We need to go talk about it with teachers, we need to study more till the doubt's gone. We work with it in that place. But here, when we're on our shamatha cushion, doubt of any sort will get in the way. And if you are familiar with doubt, you'll know how it can work on your mind. It's kind of yes, but what if this? Or could it be that? Have I got it wrong? Am I projecting onto the monastery, the teacher? Or is there really something wrong there? And so on and so on. Whatever it is, there's a place for that, but not on your meditation mat. It's not that doubt needs to go. Doubt can be helpful. But here, doubt is harmful because it stops us calming the mind. So all of those come down to agitation or dullness. The mind's too active or it's too inactive. So we have many remedies. Like I said, this isn't a meditation teaching. I just need to tell you there are many remedies. Let's look at a couple of them very quickly. One is if you're working with a Buddha image, let's say quite a big one, so you can see my hand. If that's your focus of meditation, if our mind is dull, or if we're in a shrine room, for instance, where the Buddha's in front of you and raised, then you focus on the very top of the Buddha's head. The mind's dull, and it kind of brings our inner energies up to more awake. If our mind is very, very agitated, we look at the Buddha's legs and the lotus basis of the statue set so heavily and strongly in the ground, and that pulls the energies in the mind downwards so that we become less agitated. Sometimes we use balls of light so that when you are dull and very sleepy, you keep sending a ball of white light from inside you up into space as high as you can go. It's like launching a rocket. It goes, hey, all the way up there, all the way up there, and further. So your mind goes, whoa, like this, and you keep doing that, and you find it wakes you up. When your mind is too agitated, then we send a black ball down into the very center of the earth, down into the earth, down, 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 and your whole awareness goes down and down, down, deep into it. And that calms us down. But there are all sorts of remedies for dullness and agitation. We find the ones that work for us, but they are relative remedies. So then there's what's called the main remedy in Mahamudra. Let me read you just a bit from the text. The main remedy is not to apply these relative remedies, but to look at the very essence of either the torpor or the agitation. And then once you look into it, once you find the essence of it, to remain within the essence. That is the most profound remedy. And this is also absolutely necessary as a basis for higher insight. Okay, so we've done something about this verse. Free from the polluting silt of drowsiness and torpor. Now that last bit of instruction, saying that when your mind is very sleepy and there's brain fog, rather than getting rid of the fog to get to some kind of feeling of ideal, this is what shamatha should be like, the fog itself becomes our focus. And that, you're feeling groggy, you're feeling thick, you feel like a thick fog, sleepy, unintelligent, and it doesn't feel right. So rather than getting rid of it, you explore it. What the hell is this fog? You feel it. What is foggy? My mind. Is there a mind that's foggy? Mind that's foggy is something else? Is it the mind itself? What does it feel like, the fog? Try and find the feeling. It's like when you get a toothache, something's wrong, and you start trying to work out which tooth is it, and that kind of thing. You're exploring it inside the fog, the stupid feeling, the darkness. And eventually, you'll find shunyata with your guru's help. So in the fog itself, without getting rid of it, we find shunyata, we find Buddha. And the same in the agitation, rather than calming yourself down, we learn to be with the jumping, busy mind as it goes through its acrobatics. Now that's the basis for insight, and we get now 2 verses about insight. I want to go on briefly to those today. And so the first one is in general, and the next one is called How to Cut the Root of Our Ignorance. So in general, the first verse says, when looking again and again at the mind, what I just described, whether it's a very nice, beautifully peaceful shamatha mind, as you might imagine it classically, or whether it's your stupid sleepiness, or whether it's your busy can't stay in one place for a moment, we learn to look into it in the living present moment, to be with it, to explore it, to feel it for all it is, and to discover its essence, its essential nature. So when looking again and again at the mind, where there is nothing to look at, the nothing to be seen is seen vividly, just as it is. This is what cuts through all doubts of being or not being. May it recognize itself unerringly. And the transmission for that verse is Ta me semla yang yang te pitse tong me dönni jishin lager tong yin min döna tet som chöpani chul me rango rangi she parasho. So now we've moved on from shamatha, for users, which is Sanskrit, shine in Tibetan, to vipasyana in Sanskrit, lachtong in Tibetan. And then in English, we have a problem. Sir, we have a problem. Lak tong in Tibetan. Lak means higher or highest, a higher level of, a transcendent state of, something that's the very best, the highest. Lagir in the fuller version. Lak, lagir. Tong means seeing, vision, view. Lagir tong, you could translate as higher sight. But then it's not really a question of high and low, it's more a question we've seen of going into the torpor, the agitation, or the state of absorption in shamata. We're going kind of in. So insight, linguistically, for a computer, is a wonderful translation. Lagir tong, deep insight, high insight. But the word insight in English is in English, and it's been around for a long time. And then nowadays we've got Jungian psychology and many other things. And we also have, like very locally, currently, to Samiling, we've got Rob Nairn's mindfulness and insight. And he uses the word insight in a sort of bridge place somewhere between Jungian and Dharma. And I'm only mentioning this because I know some of you are practicing this or are interested, or you know Rob. And so I have to say, Akon Rinpoche was not happy with that. It's not that it doesn't benefit people. Rob benefits many, many people, and the system of mindfulness that he's evolved, very, very helpful. No one's saying not that. But here we're talking about Mahamudra, and we're talking more generally about vipassana in Buddhism, in the Bodhisattva path. It has only one meaning in the Bodhisattva path and in Mahamudra. Only one. Only one. Vipassana, insight, means direct presence of Buddha mind. Nothing else. If Buddha mind is there, vipassana is there. If Buddha mind isn't there, then vipassana, raktong, insight, if we use that as a translation, isn't there. Any kind of insight into anything about you, any kind of insight into your history, any kind of insight into the way the mind works, any kind of insight into the workings of karma, all of those things, so wonderful, but we don't call them vipassana. We call them prajna, wisdom. Perfect. We've got many words, many areas of prajna, and that correspond to the English use of the term insight, where you suddenly get it. You see into things. You feel how it works, how it's going on. You understand what happens, why you acted the way you did for 50 years of your life. That's insight in the English sense. But if we're talking about vipassana in the Mahayana sense, it has only one meaning. This is why Akon Rinpoche really wanted to make a point about it. Buddha mind is there, vipassana. Buddha mind is not there, no vipassana. This verse is about vipassana, daktong, insight in that sense, and only that, which is what we're aiming for. So now, I do want to say a few more words. Where are we? Yeah. Well, sorry, I've got too many papers I'm balancing off screen. If you could see off screen, you would be appalled. I'm surrounded by a mess. So we'll come back, of course, in the next session to this verse because we're more or less finished for today. But yeah, I've got two more things to say. I've said that insight is Buddha mind only in Mahayana. If we go back now to our Theravadas or to more generally the Shravaka level of teaching, we've seen that shamatha goes through the 4 Dhyanas and the 4 formless meditations and the special aspect of the 4th Dhyana. What is vipassana for them? It's not Buddha mind. They don't talk in those terms. Buddha nature, Buddha mind, they don't talk in those terms at all. It is the 4 noble truths. So let's think, with shamatha, you're making the mind more and more still by not being distracted, not being pulled into the habits. The habits die by themselves. Your samsara dies all by itself, and your mind becomes peaceful, blissful, equanimity. And anyone can do that, Buddhist or not Buddhist. Many people do. It's in other Indian faiths, many other faiths. It's just the logic of holding the mind in one place where you want it. So the Buddhist insight is in that most noble state of the 4th Dhyana, especially, all the way along, but especially there. You dwell your mind on the 4 noble truths. And then the breakthroughs occur, 4 for each of the 4 noble truths. That makes 16 moments of breakthrough. And then when we make them less, it's 8 pairs of 2. So you get a breakthrough, and then what follows on from that breakthrough. So the truth of suffering, it's got 4. So anyway, not the words anymore, the ideas of the truth of suffering, but within shamatha's deep peace, the reality of people following their desire and their anger and the suffering is vividly there. It doesn't need verbalizing. And the implications, the consequences, that and so on. So anyway, in the Shravaka path, vipassana is applying the 4 noble truths, blending them with shamatha. In the Bodhisattva path, we blend awakening to Buddha mind with shamatha. In the Mahamudra path, we have extraordinary guru instructions to help the disciple awaken even more quickly to Buddha mind within the shamatha. When that happens in the time of awakening, there is no duality. There is no meditator having an experience. The only way we can describe it in words is that in those moments, the timeless truth of mind knows itself. So in this verse, the last line says, may it recognize, may it, remember it, Buddha mind, it, that, whatever, may it recognize itself unerringly. Unerringly, we'll come back to it next week. And then the rest of this verse. So let's stop there for today. As you can see, it's a vast topic. Remember, we are just going through this prayer. All of this can be developed so meaningfully, so beautifully in courses that actually teach us about meditation, paramita meditation. Here we're just trying to understand Karmapa's prayer. Let's dedicate anything that was good and useful. Sonam diye tamche zikpane topne nye pedranam pamchene je ganache palak trukpaye sipe sole drowa drowarisho janchob semcho rinpoche maje panam je jochik je pa nyampa me padam kongne kongdu talwarisho Gewa diye nyoduta chaja chenpo drokjone drowa chikjang malupa deye sala kaparasho. Oh, thank you all immensely, and now it's over to you. If you've got anything you'd like to add or to ask.
I can. It's Yael.
Israel, yes. Hello.
So if I understood it right, not that I understand what it means, but at least, on a conceptual level, a Buddha has no thought, no analysis. They just act spontaneously. They do the right thing spontaneously. Is it true?
Yeah, that's what the texts say. Completely.
And how about bodhisattvas on the 10th level? What's the difference with them, at least on the grosser level? Is it the same?
There, it says, in terms of helping other beings, this is a quote from Maitreya's teachings, in terms of helping other beings, there is not one atom of difference between the powers of a 10th level bodhisattva and a Buddha. It's the same. But in terms of personal, if we can use that term, realization, then the difference is the same as the difference of the quantity of water in an ox's hoof print and the water that's in an ocean. So imagine in India, oxes left an imprint in the ground, water can get into that, however much, like a cupful, and then the ocean. So there's a big difference. The Buddha's mind is truly without limit. There is no limit. It embraces every sentient being, every dimension of space, every dimension of time. There is no reality anywhere whatsoever which is not encompassed by, pervaded by Buddha's mind. That's the ocean. The 10th level bodhisattva's mind is like, compared to us, immense, immense, immense. So what we do actually, we study the 10 bodhisattva levels. And the first bodhisattva level, we can sort of understand their activity, what drops away from the mind in order for it to be a first level bodhisattva mind. And once that's within our grasp of understanding, but then from there, we have to see, well, then what falls away to make them second level bodhisattva in terms of thought, for instance. And then we go through this, grows, middling grows, and all of that. We look at that. And then what qualities come out because of that. So as we go through the bodhisattva levels, then that helps us get towards a 10th bodhisattva level in terms of concepts. And we see our concepts about what it must be like. But there's a difference between concepts being present and concepts having power. And we need to understand this, I think, early on. We're not going to a state necessarily where there are no concepts. It's where at the beginning, concepts have no more power over us, but they can still be there. And then at certain stages in our Mahamudra, we value concepts being there, as I was mentioning earlier, with torpor or with hyperactive mind, because the concepts themselves become our window to Buddha nature, and they help us move towards this samsara and nirvana being one, and so on and so on. So it's very hard to give a few words answer to your question, but I don't want it to sound like a cop-out saying what we really need to do is to study the 10 bodhisattva levels in detail. But certainly we should. It's the only way. It's the only way. It's the only way. And for instance, in Samiling, Khenpo, what's his name? Is it Khenpo? Anyway, Drupal Rinpoche, people call him. He was running 6 one-month courses. Right, the first one, Chandrakirti, Shunyata, voidness. The second one, Nagarjuna, second year, Nagarjuna, voidness, and then so on. One of the last ones we did, after going deep into all Shunyata and Nagarjuna and Buddha nature and all of that, was the stages of the path. Because from Atisha, because it's you can't do it simply. You need to go through those stages and their correspondences. But there, to give you a simple answer to your question, 10th level bodhisattvas have something of the very finest concepts left. That's what it says. But what is left of the concepts on the 10th bodhisattva level is what we call first moments. So when we have an idea or an emotion, if we could look into fractions of a second, there's one place it just comes out of nowhere, out of our alaya, subconscious. And then it develops, like anger builds up, it develops, desire builds up, it develops, a thought, an idea evolves, it takes seconds, and so on. We see split second by split seconds how it evolves. So as we go through the bodhisattva levels, we're able to dissolve the concept earlier and earlier on. So it's just 5, 6, 7 moments, 3, 4 moments. And then by the 10th level, bodhisattva, it's only the first moments. And that's the problem. Because once something's there, you can work with it. That comes out of nowhere. A desire, for instance. So in the classic text, it talks about seeing somebody else's body. How does that evolve desire as you go through the levels? Is there something passionate that comes up and you have to deal with it, and less and then the first moments? But if a body walks in the door, that first instant of habitual reaction will be there. So 10th level bodhisattvas, it's dissolved after the first instant. But how do you get rid of the first instance? So they have a special aspect or a special skill in one particular meditation absorption we call the Vajra-like samadhi. And it's which means remaining totally in Buddha mind. By remaining totally in Buddha mind, then those first moment habits disappear. It's the only way. So their breakthrough from 10th level bodhisattva to Buddha happens through the completion of that Vajra-like samadhi.
Thank you, amazing. And another thing that you said also, the difference is that they don't get caught up in it.
That's from quite early on. That's from first bodhisattva level. They're powerless. Oh. They're powerless. Concepts are there, but they are powerless. And even before first bodhisattva level breakthrough, that depends on each person's journey. But even before that, the concepts can be there. They can, not just concepts, also feelings, passionate feelings. They can be there in the landscape, but you're on top of them. Your mind is not pulled into them. You don't act because of them. And your mind isn't angry. Your mind is aware and stable, but anger is there in your being somewhere.
Thank you.
That can happen quite early. I think it needs to happen quite early on too.
Can't wait.
Good. Maybe we finished for today then. So thank you all very much, and then we meet again next Saturday. And as I was saying before the session started officially, I do hope to finish Mahamudra prayer before Christmas. Christmas is on a weekend, New Year's on a weekend, so we don't meet up on those Saturdays. So it will be around the 17th or something of December. I hope we can all rejoice and do a big dedication for this Mahamudra prayer journey. And very soon I need to announce what course will come next after that. Anyway, take good care of yourselves in the coming week, and lovely to see you all. And for those of you who are online, best wishes. Seeing the YouTube. Bye-bye now.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ken.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Ken. Try now.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Bye.